The two astronauts discovered their teammate's body on Mars. Moreover, the body was infested with alien worms. The astronauts wanted to weld open the spacesuit for confirmation. As a result, the alien worms exploded upon contact with the flame. Then the body was blown apart. The two astronauts wanted to capture one of the worms for research purposes. The smell of blood attracted numerous bizarre creatures. They surrounded the injured astronaut. The latter knew he wouldn't survive, so he threw the sample to his teammate. Then he ignited a flamethrower, perishing along with the worms. What exactly happened on the mysterious Mars? This is the plot of the classic science fiction film Red Planet. The story takes place in the year 2050. The development of modern civilization and the rapid increase in population have burdened the Earth to an unbearable extent. In search of a new habitat for humanity, scientists turned their attention to Mars, which has the most similar environment to Earth. Over the past few decades, they have continuously launched unmanned spacecraft carrying algae in an attempt to use modern technology to improve the relatively harsh living conditions on Mars. The goal was to have these algae produce oxygen on the planet. However, just as progress was being made, the machinery on Mars started to malfunction. The oxygen levels began to decline gradually. To rectify the situation as quickly as possible, astronaut Kate, a woman, led a team of top-notch scientists on an expedition to the Red Planet. Let us briefly introduce this exploration team. Chief Scientist and Cruise Mainframe Santen, Co-Pilot Enzo, Mechanical Systems Engineer Cool Guy, and the top-notch Bioengineer David, along with Reproductive Expert Max. Their journey, from the beginning, was destined to be filled with hardships. Therefore, Kate borrowed a robot named AME from the Army to serve as their navigator. It is equipped with a helium nucleus-powered battery. It can automatically recognize images and avoid obstacles. It has two modes, navigation and combat. The spaceship will take 6 months to reach Mars because there is only one bathroom on board. Kate is often seen naked by others. She remains very calm about it. She develops a romantic relationship with Cool Guy. The 6 months pass quickly. The spaceship has reached Mars orbit. The astronauts need to board the lander to descend to the Mars base. Suddenly, the spaceship detects a gamma radiation shockwave. It's a solar storm. A level 5 electromagnetic pulse strikes. The spaceship is at risk of crashing at any moment. Kate immediately gives the order for everyone to gather in the shelter. The spaceship is surrounded by bright flames. They safely pass through the solar storm, but the spaceship's propulsion system is damaged. The auxiliary power system also malfunctions. They need to switch to the lander immediately. The lander's automatic launch system is also malfunctioning. Someone needs to stay behind and manually launch it. Kate, as the commander, must stay behind. The mood among the crew is very heavy, because the person who stays behind most likely will perish with the spaceship. After assisting the crew in a successful launch, the spaceship loses power and goes out of control. The artificial gravity system completely fails. Shortly after, fire breaks out in the number 4 entrance tunnel. It's difficult to deal with fires in zero-gravity conditions. Plus, the solar storm destroys the automatic fire suppression system. Kate struggles to manually extinguish the fire, but as she puts out one fire, the other side started burning. The spaceship is engulfed in fire, with 80% of it affected. Smoke quickly fills the cabin. Kate quickly puts on her protective suit. Then she secures herself to the wall. She activates the oxygen venting system. She vents the fire and oxygen out of the cabin. Luckily, there is spare oxygen in her spacesuit. She won't run out of oxygen and suffocate in the short term. Kate wants to use this time to repair the gravity and oxygen systems. On the other side, the crew in the lander also encounters trouble. The automatic navigation system malfunctions. The lander fails to automatically lock onto the Mars base. They switch to manual control. Manual operation is not 100% precise. As a result, they deviate from the target area. The terrain is steep. The crew abandons the landing system. They discard the robot. They rely on the protective airbags for a decelerated landing. Since the airbags are spherical, the lander becomes a ball after landing. It unexpectedly rolls down a cliff. After a series of rolls, the airbags finally deflate. They crawl out of the capsule and try to contact the spaceship. The radio malfunctions. They also discarded the AME during the landing. They cannot determine the exact location of the Mars base. They make an estimation based on the last navigation data. The base should be within a range of 60 to 120 kilometers. Cool Guy retrieves the base photos. Then he opens the panoramic imaging mode and rotates the images. They roughly determine the direction of the base. The spacesuit's oxygen can only last for 7.5 hours. Just as everyone is getting ready to leave, Santan remains seated in place. It turns out he used an X-ray device to scan his body, and discovered a ruptured spleen, and severe internal bleeding. Although the base has emergency medical equipment, Santan doesn't want to waste everyone's energy and oxygen. He volunteers to stay behind, and wait for death. And dying on Mars is considered a good ending. Everyone left Santan and set off. At this moment, Kate used the second chip to change the main system, and fixed the main functions of the spaceship. She tried to contact headquarters, but didn't receive any response. Kate opened the matrix search to find the landing area of the team members. She quickly located Santan's position, but didn't see any signs of the others for now. On the other side, AME also initiated the program to separate the aircraft and search for ground crew members. Meanwhile, the group led by Cool Guy continued moving forward, but didn't encounter any algae organisms along the way. Even if all the algae previously sent to Mars had died, there should still be some traces left, right? The group carried on with doubts, and continued their journey, unaware of the strange insects on the ground. Soon, the base finally appeared on the horizon. They quickened their pace, and ran towards it, but found the base had turned into ruins. Kate, who was still on the spaceship, also noticed this. The Mars base could withstand a level 5 solar storm, and wouldn't be easily damaged. What could it be to cause this level of destruction? The 4 team members surveyed the area, but found no supplies. With only about 10 minutes of oxygen left in their protective suits, they only had about 10 minutes left. All they could do was wait for death right there.
Short time to live, long time to wait.
Max and Enzo walked to the edge of a cliff, and started chatting. After this mission, Max had planned to marry his girlfriend of many years. Now, even surviving and going back alive had become a luxury. He blamed Enzo, his deputy, for not landing properly. This led to an argument between the two. In the midst of pushing and shoving, Max pushed Enzo off the cliff. He quickly composed himself and went back. He lied to Cool Guy and the others, saying that Enzo chose to commit suicide out of despair. At this moment, everyone felt extremely disheartened. They didn't feel like to think about the loopholes in Max's words. As time passed, they started experiencing oxygen deprivation. One of the team members even collapsed and convulsed on the ground. He instinctively opened his face mask, but unexpectedly found that he could breathe oxygen. Although the concentration was quite low, it was like breathing in high-altitude regions, but it was still much better than suffocating to death. While the 3 of them felt joyous, they couldn't help but be puzzled. The ground algae had long disappeared, so where did the oxygen in the atmosphere come from? They planned to convey this message first. As the 3 of them searched for the base, they came across a Mars rover that was deployed in 1997. There must be a radio on it to transmit the message, but the base was 4 kilometers away from the rover, and it was getting late. The group decided to stay and light a fire for warmth, and set off again in the morning. Meanwhile, Houston's Mission Control Center received the signal sent by Kate. They believed that they could ignite the main engine to help Kate leave Mars orbit and terminate the landing mission to return to Earth. While the spacecraft's propulsion system didn't respond, Kate could only wait for further instructions, and she also wanted to search for the other team members. AME is guided by the spacecraft, and it successfully located Cool Guy and the other 2. However, during the landing, Amy's microprocessor was damaged. David suggested simply removing its Mars locator. They decided to put it on the spacecraft to recycle the parts, but this would essentially mean killing AME. After the 3 of them made up their minds, they prepared to act. Unexpectedly, AME suddenly erupted and switched to combat mode, knocking them away. David picked up a steel pipe intending to fight back. Unexpectedly, the pipe in his hand was cut into several pieces. AME scanned with precision. After breaking one of his ribs, it swiftly left. Cool Guy speculated that when AME crashed, it accidentally switched to military mode. So when it heard the 3 of them planning to dismantle it, it identified them as enemies and attacked. And AME breaking one of David's ribs was a very military-style action, because an injured person would inevitably hinder their companions. Cool Guy expressed that AME would return to search and kill us one by one. David endured the pain and endured the night. The next morning, the 3 of them set off to find the rover. They took a break on Mars once again.
Sure gets some high arc in this low gravity, huh?
After a while of searching, the 3 of them found the abandoned rover. They removed the communication module from the rover and connected it to their spacesuits. Cool Guy attempted to send a distress signal, but after 2 hours, there was no response. He bundled up the wires of the communication module, preparing to discard it. But just before letting go, they received a reply. Both sides were overjoyed. Cool Guy briefly explained the current situation. Kate was also curious about the source of oxygen on Mars. However, the immediate priority was to consult the ground command center for a rescue plan. Fortunately, they quickly received a reply. 30 years ago, there was a Soviet probe that failed to return to Earth from Mars. If the three of them could find that spacecraft and attempt to restart it, there might be a glimmer of hope. But the location of the spacecraft is quite far. They are a full 100 kilometers away. And, more importantly, the three of them need to within 19 hours find the spacecraft and meet Kate, because after 19 hours, Kate's spaceship must leave Mars orbit and return, or her fuel will be depleted. The three of them dare not waste time, and quickly set off on their journey. Meanwhile, AMEE has been observing their every move from the shadows. At this moment, Kate shuts down the public communication. She tells Cool Guy that the spacecraft can only accommodate 2 people. Cool Guy decides to keep this information hidden for now. As night falls, Mars suddenly experiences a snowstorm. The three of them cannot continue forward, and can only seek shelter in a cave. They have approximately 5 more hours of travel to reach the spacecraft. After hesitating, Cool Guy confesses the truth that the spaceship can only accommodate 2 people, and expresses willingness to stay behind and give the opportunity to the other 2 to lighten the heavy atmosphere. Cool Guy makes a joke that the small spaceship is Soviet-made 30 years ago, and it might explode after flying a few meters. He humorously suggests that he might end up being the one who lives the longest. Cool Guy truly feels ready to sacrifice, but Max doesn't see it that way. He constantly believes that the remaining 2 will abandon him. Therefore, while they are asleep, Max steals the communication device and sets off ahead of them. But Max never expected that AMEE was lurking nearby. When AMEE sees Max alone, it swiftly attacks and kills him. Max is brutally killed. AME also transmitted the scene of the massacre to Cool Guy and David. Because the communication device is crucial, Cool Guy and David hurriedly chase after to investigate. Unexpectedly, they discover a patch of algae land. Why does the algae only proliferate in this specific area? The 2 of them don't have time to study. They quickly find Max's body. He was still holding the communication device when he died. At this moment, David raises a question. How did Max put on the face mask? He leans over the body to listen. Unbeknownst to him, a worm crawls into Max's nostril. David wants to weld open the protective suit to take a look. Unexpectedly, a bunch of worms pour out from inside. No wonder they couldn't see the algae before. It turns out these alien creatures have eaten all the algae. But since there is oxygen on Mars, it means the worms can produce oxygen too. Perhaps they can save Earth. The 2 of them quickly collect samples and flee the scene. David's blood attracts a swarm of worms. He hands the samples to Cool Guy. He ignites himself and perishes with the worms. The flames spread instantly. Even Kate, who is far away in the spacecraft, can see the waves of flames on the Mars surface. Fortunately, Cool Guy is not affected by the flames. He immediately contacts Kate, and, under her guidance, successfully locates the probe. Cool Guy is a mechanical engineer. He quickly fixes most of the malfunctions, but the problem is, this spaceship has been abandoned for 30 years. The batteries inside have long since drained. Just as Cool Guy is in despair, Amy's spacecraft suddenly appears. Cool Guy remembers, AME has a helium nuclear power battery inside. If he can remove it, he can definitely restart the probe. Yet, he doesn't have a weapon. He certainly can't defeat the robot. Cool Guy notices a nearby high-voltage power source. He instantly comes up with an idea. He sets up a trap with parts from the probe. He sits in place and waits. Soon, AMEE approaches from a distance. It runs towards Cool Guy's head, and precisely targets his heart. A parachute entangles AMEE. Cool Guy sets it on fire. AMEE realizes it can't escape the situation. It activates the self-destruct program, intending to crash the spacecraft. Yet, Cool Guy manages to do it in the last second. He successfully retrieves the battery from Amy's body. He dodges the explosion with a leap. He then uses the battery to start the probe. He safely arrives near Kate's spacecraft, but the models don't match. They can't dock properly. At a critical moment, Kate takes a risky move. She ties herself with a cable, and locks onto the probe's position. After everything is ready, Kate ejects herself. She grabs onto the drifting probe in space. Then, she uses the voice control system to command the spacecraft to retract the cable. She successfully drags the probe back to the spaceship. Kate immediately administers first aid to Cool Guy. The 2 of them passionately embrace. Now, all they need to do is bring the samples back to Earth. and they can unravel the mystery of Mars oxygen. The movie ends here. The plot is set in a conventional manner. First, the spacecraft is devastated by a solar storm. Then there are the indiscriminate combat robots, and the lack of trust among the crew. And finally, the alien creatures, comprising the 3 stages of the entire movie. If you enjoy my channel, please subscribing it.